Start. Okay.
Today, Tuesday, October 12th.
It is.
Facilities Committee meeting, 4 p.m. And, a printed agenda. That was for you.
It was, but you could do it.
All right, so we got first updates on a bunch of things. Radon, roof, softball field.
Yeah, and we're going to pass on any of that stuff for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Bill Sadowski, our new facilities director.
He's going to give us those updates.
So Bill's been here for, 3 weeks now?
Yeah.
He is on his way down. We really need Bill to be doing this. So let's talk about, we're going to go right to number 3, and we'll if that's all right. An elementary transportation project, estimated taxpayer impact. So I kind of want to talk about number 3 prior for us beginning and see where the board wants to go with this. So, there's a lot of things that we need to do and look at, and, as our building condition, hey, Bill, come on in. As our building condition survey goes and we figure out more, the board will really figure out where we want to go. I think the end all, as you guys know, it's how much money do we have that's aidable that we can get per building, right? And we understand this, but I don't believe all community members do. So I think it's important for us to kind of talk about this for a quick second. Is how much money we have available per building per aid ratio, how much money we've already used for middle school, high school, and how much then will we have left on that, because people don't understand that either. And then how much money can we spend without having it be a tax impact? And if it is going to be a tax impact, how much would it be? And what are we feeling comfortable with? Here's the reason why I say those things. Because I've been approached by some community members who want to discuss adding things to our school district without understanding how things really work, right? They don't understand the whole impact of it. And I'm meeting with them to actually discuss it so they have an understanding of the whole picture before, because I don't want to say no or yes without them understanding how funding works. What they want is, and I'll tell you there's a push from some community members, is they want a turf field for the soccer field or football or lacrosse, but they want turf. That's one of the big things people want. And, and as I talk to people, they need to understand, A, the board has to approve the direction that we're going. B, we have to have the funding to do these things. And C, it has to make sense to do them because of all the other things that have to get done. And, I think people are like, well, we'll raise money or, we'll find grants or we'll donate. And, respectfully, I will say this to the board. If somebody wants to donate $2 million to the school district, I'd rather put that $2 million towards something other than a turf field, considering we have so many things that we need to get accomplished or done. Before I begin, how does the board feel like this? I know Jim isn't here, so it's really Trish and Rob. What do you guys feel about turf fields? Is that something that, you would want the direction of the district to look into in the future? Like, what were you thinking?
I mean, given unlimited funds, I would support it, I think. I guess I don't know enough about the pros and the cons. I think you said, Frank, you put one in
I did put turf fields in Lansingburg. I don't know if I'd ever do it again. There's positive and negatives towards turf fields. I do have a bias that I'm not going to tell you because you'd be very surprised, even considering what I've done in my previous districts.
Interesting.
But yeah.
My only one other comment is, we've talked a bunch, not sure since you've been on, Tricia, certainly before, a lot about athletic field maintenance in general. But, at one point, one of the discussions we had when turf was brought up was, look, as we've expanded the sport that we've done here, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, other things, we have more fields that need to get used. If we were to have, say, a turf field so like the football field, ideally should only be used certain times for certain things at a certain amount, right? In order to maintain that field properly and have it be in the shape it needs to be in for games and have it, get the number of years out of it that we want before other things have to be done. If you have a turf field, a lot of that goes out the window, and now you can play lacrosse on it, you can practice soccer on it, you can play football on it, all without having to worry about damaging the grass, right? So when we've talked about turf in the past, that's sort of been the angle that was pushed out. So it was sort of like a, much in the same way how at the elementary school, running out of space for kids, right? Like at athletic field wise, we're running out of maybe good spaces or the best spaces for teams to practice, play, etc. as our athletics grow. And that's something that was thrown out there to help mitigate some of that. And right, like now, well, now lacrosse could play on that field, right? Because usually lacrosse is spring. Usually in the spring, I think you don't really want to be ripping up that football field. Was what we were told by the athletic folks at the consultants that came in. So if with turf, you can do that. So that's my 2 cents. It's not really an answer, just kind of what we.
No, understandable. Trish?
I guess I'm more familiar with the cons of turf. It gets really, really, really hot. Some people say it causes knee and ankle injuries. It's terrible for the environment, especially when you dispose of it. And there's some controversy with soccer players and the pellets going into the lungs of the goalies.
Causing that recently. That's a study, isn't it?
What? Has it been debunked?
Is that a new study about PFAOAs or coming out with that?
I don't think it's that new. I remember my parents mentioning something when my oldest daughter was doing like kinder whatever at Aframs about that being a concern.
I haven't followed it, but there was a number of soccer goalies that developed cancer, and one of the common denominators was the turf, and that they were goalies, so they're constantly like jumping, face first onto the turf. But I don't know. I haven't followed it enough. My initial reaction is I'm more familiar with the cons than the pros of turf.
One of the cons you mentioned is actually pro. In certain times, it gets hot. Oh, price is ridiculous.
That's another.
One of the cons you mentioned was being hot, but actually that can be a positive because then you get more rain on it as well. Because that
guess it depends on the season.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've seen that be a positive as well. Where I stand, so where I'm coming from, full cards laid on the table, is there are things that need to be done. If you can always add icing to the cake, add to the things, by all means, to look at what that can be and figure that out. Ask for the district. Turf is not the most important thing in the world right now. Getting our fields up to where they need and keeping them on a good fertilization, understanding where they are, a seeding program, an overseeding program, taking care of the field with irrigation and paying for that. That would give you a long run in the future if you're having fields that are maintained well. Having a system of repeating and going back on is doable. I have seen the cost of turf and the replacement cost of turf can be very expensive on a district. So that's something that always concerns me with these things. There's pros and cons to having a turf, but I feel like we have major issues we still have to overcome. I would say, let's put $2 million into a turf field.
Hence my initial comment, unlimited.
If someone said here, there's a grant, let's look at it.
That brings you back to your interrupt really quick. You guys are breaking up really badly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
so are you
I'm
now?
having a hard time hearing.
Okay.
I don't know, Jim, are you having the same problem? You're muted, Jim.
Jim is on mute.
Yep, I'm not getting a good signal from the main room there.
Oh, I thought we resolved it.
We always resolve it, then it comes back. All right, I'm going to unplug for a quick second, plug into my laptop, my computer. Hopefully that will work better. Okay? So
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All
right. Are you
Hold on.
guys-
Hold on. I don't know if they can see us.
Oh,
It's spinning.
are we still
Oh,
recording?
you sound better though. Right now, we just see an owl.
Yeah. All right.
There you go.
All right. Are we working now?
That's much better.
Yeah, much better.
Must be my Wi-Fi's bad over there again.
So I have one more comment though, Frank, back to the first thing you said, where I guess I disagree a bit, and that's on if the community or somebody raises a bunch of money for a specific purpose to give to us. So we ran into the same thing with the playground, for example, right? The community raised almost $200,000 for a playground, donated the money that we then, I think there was, there was never a worry that maybe the school wouldn't spend it on the playground, but there was, it came up at one point, well, technically that money comes in and the school could do whatever they wanted to do, right? Because it's a cash donation. I don't know how good I feel about, if the community works very hard over a long period of time and raises money for a specific thing and wants to do that thing and give us the money to do that thing, we should spend the money on the thing that
I agree. I just think, but what I want to state is that is the board's decision. The board has to say, please, I will accept $2 million if you raise $2 million for a turf field, or no, we would not want you to raise $2 million. Like, somebody can't just say, here, I want you to do X, and then you say, I'm going to do it because you gave me the money.
Sure. Yep.
It has to be a decision of what that school district wants. So the full board will have to have that conversation and say, yes, this is a road that we want to go down, or no, this is not a road we want to go down. If I came to you and said, Rob, I'm going to give you $1 million to build an ice skating rink, and I give it to you, I already have it, and you say, well, hold on a minute.
Point taken.
I don't want, I don't want an ice skating rink.
Yep.
That's not something that we'd rather not go down that route. That's the decision, because some schools don't go down the route of having a turf field.
Well, and at that point, the conversation can and should be had at the outset before anybody raises
that's
$2 million to go.
Hence the reason I'm having this conversation now, because I know these are the conversations that are being had in the community, and I wanted to have this conversation here to say, what does the board feel? Is this a conversation you want me to continue to have, or does the board not want to have this conversation to be continued to have regarding? Because, as we're looking at doing facility increases, it's a perfect time, right? If you're looking at facility increases and you say, let's say we do a transportation facility and we're ripping up stuff and doing those things, doing, other infrastructure upgrades is a perfect time to do infrastructure upgrades if you have the funds available to do so. But I think that's, again, that is a board decision.
Yeah. Would we look up like in other things when I'm not an expert on turf. I don't think any of us are experts on
Joe Sapienza knows a lot more about it than any of us in this room.
Could we have Joe come in and talk? And then
he was going to.
Oh, yeah.
But having the baby is a little bit different.
Sure.
So Joe will tell you this. Joe goes, would I love to have a turf field? Of course. Do I feel that's a priority? No. And he also said if you were going to do a turf field at a soccer field where you could play football, soccer, lacrosse, all those other things, then you have to change your track because the track is too small.
Oh,
right? Yeah. So he goes, so Joe started walking through and I go, wait a minute, this is a lot bigger than I even thought of. So there's more that goes into this, but again, is it something that the district could look at saying, yep, this is something down the road we want to do? Yes, but you really need to look at your building condition survey. You need to look at your elementary school. You have to look at your transportation facility. And the decision has to be had is, where are you willing to go with the majority of everything? If it's zero impact on the taxpayer, in 10 years down the road, it's zero impact on the taxpayer because, you have to look at upkeep, maintenance, and everything else. I think those are all conversations that have to be had at the same time that people are having these other conversations. So everything's laid on the table so people know what they're getting themselves into when having these conversations.
Maybe it makes sense just for an idea to frame the conversation with these folks about, what are some of the broader set of needs that for both the district and for these parents who, maybe, I keep hearing lights brought up every 2 years, right? Like, is that something where, maybe if now is not a good time or we have physical constraints like too small of a track and other things that would make a turf field untenable, well, maybe if they're in a fundraising mood, maybe there's some other things like a much bigger, what was it, press box and refreshment stand and
listen,
lights would be cool.
I will increase different district infrastructure all day long and try to figure things out. I think that's where I have to have the conversation with the board is, where does this committee want me to go? If that's the direction that this committee wants me to go and have the conversation and feel people out, I'm more than happy to do so and build it. If it's, okay, no, we want you to look at only turf, or see this, or look at all options and bring it back to us, that's what I need to know with this committee.
I mean, I guess I'd like to know and have a better understanding of what that athletic community wants. Like, what do they feel their needs are, and what do they want? Maybe beyond just saying we want the turf field.
Well, I think so. Having an understanding of what an athletic community wants is you're opening up a whole different can of worms. If I'm talking to 5 people or 10 people, they're gonna. And it depends who I'm talking to.
So there is no one. Yeah.
Right. My kid's a swimmer, so you know what I want. I want X, Y, Z for the pool. My other kid's a tennis player. You know what? I want a new tennis court.
Yeah.
My kid plays lacrosse. I want a killer lacrosse field. My kid plays softball. I want a ceiling. Yep. I think you have to look at the wants and needs of what everybody has and wants. But in the end, you have to kind of play it out together. Is what can we do as an infrastructure? Like you said, new sound system, new lights, new tennis, new things across the board. How can we then create a plan that's going to upkeep these things? I just want to make sure that we understand is, as you said, Rob, if someone's going to give us that money, how do we say no to it? There has to be a guide already to what we're going to accept or not accept, or what direction we're willing to go in. And I think it's awesome that we have the means and ability within our community for people to help support us. I think that's fantastic. And, taking advantage of that isn't a bad thing. It's just making sure that we do it right. So I am going to meet with a community member who definitely has understanding of this stuff. And I think it's more, I use turf as an example, but I definitely think this community member wants more than, wants to have an understanding of how they can help support more, right? I think it's more than just turf. I'm using turf because that's the big ticket item. That's the one that's there, But I do think there's more that can be done here. I just wanted to bring it up as a conversation topic.
Cool. Yeah, because, lights would be super cool, too.
So I actually just gave a grant to the Kiwanis Club. It's a Major League Baseball grant where they're like, oh, maybe we could get lights for the elementary school. You could do soccer and everything. And I'm like, well, all right, well, easy. Because, Major League Baseball grant is not going to give you all of that money. They're talking small probably for grants. And again, we as a school district do not always get grant money, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not at the place where we're going to always have we're not the most desirable school district for grants because of our income and our wealth ratio. So, speaking of that, because we already stopped Bill, so we're going to stay in number 3, I believe. So Jim, let's talk about this. We were talking about the elementary school and how the elementary school funding would work. And then if we were to move the transportation facility to the back and all the pricing, why don't you kind of walk us through that project and how much estimate costs we would receive. Again,
so share. I'm not getting the selection to share. Okay, there it is. Okay, so what you are looking at right here is, let's go to the, I'll call it worst case scenario, where we have our $15 million that we're investing in the elementary school, and the high estimate of the transportation facility at this point is $10 million.
Jim?
Yep.
Just to clarify, that $15 million is what's aidable and what we're allowed in allocated costs for the state, correct?
That's the maximum allowable aidable amount that we have at this point. Yes. The transportation facility is a little different because it's treated as a separate entity. So when you go through and you look at aidability ratios, the transportation facility is likely to be less than an instructional facility, and we've reflected that. And then you figure out what the estimated aid is and what the local share would be based on those numbers. When you bring that all down and you take out the 4 million that we estimate that we'll have to put against it from the capital reserves, you have a principal expense for the local taxpayers. Then when you calculate it out, including interest, which of course you have to do, the state aids you on interest, but you have to pay the interest, so it offsets at the aid ratio. Net local debt service becomes 11 million in this scenario, which is over a 21-year period. There's a calculation down below. Really doesn't matter. It's basically balancing the different pieces of the project, new building versus renovation. So it would be over 21 years, and we would have a net impact of a little over $500,000 per year on the local taxpayers. And that comes out to 2.73% increase on the tax levy at that rate. Then we can go through different scenarios based on basically if something else changes or if we reduce the expense. So if we go down $1.5 million on the transportation facility, you can see that the ultimate impact is 2.46% on the tax levy. If you go down another $1.5 million, it's 2.11. If you go down to the very basic 5.5, which is where we thought we were starting originally, it's 1.86. So all of these calculate all the way through to show what the impact is on the taxpayer. I'd be happy to answer any question you have on that at this point.
Jim, can you remind me, what did you say the difference in the 4 scenarios is?
Basically the cost of the transportation facility project. So the worst case scenario is 10 million, then it's 8.5, 7, and 5.5, basically grading it down to see.
Meaning because we're like so loose on what the actual cost is at this point, we're just using different scenarios?
Correct. We're not
Okay.
sure exactly what the impact will be. We've been talking about what the hard costs versus soft costs are going to be, and that's been a discussion between the architects and I. So.
Okay. But the elementary school piece is staying about the same?
Because that's our maximum cost allowance.
Oh, right, okay.
So that's why the elementary is kind of a lock for us.
A lock meaning we can do it within that price point?
Because of the fact that you have the cost allowance of 15 million and then it's the 95% aid ratio, it's a little bit better in comparison to the transportation facility, which is 60% aid ratio. You know.
Right, but I mean, I guess I was asking, so we think we can do that construction with 15 million, no problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We definitely think we can do that and maybe do some other things.
Okay.
But again, it's all at the elementary school for that.
Yep, understood. I was just making sure I understood.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something to be done. But again, it's all dependent on the transportation facility, right? That's the kicker of all this is that in order to do any of the work down there that we want to get done, it's the transportation facility that needs to move.
Right.
It is a lot, to ask, and you're looking at. I'm going to say that we probably won't be 10, but I think we'll be between 7.5 and 9. Right, Jim? What do you think?
I think you're probably in that ballpark. Yes.
I mean, we're still looking at least 2% taxpayer increase or addition onto it. And then that's what I'm saying is if we add anything else to that project, that's where, if you're adding more, that's where you see more taxpayer increase. And if people are willing to add more and approve more, then great. But that's already a big ask already. And that's where I think we have, as a board, when we do talk to the full board about this, that's going to be part of that conversation. And then if it's going to be, yes, we're going to move forward and we want to ask, it's when do we ask? And I will tell you now, we don't ask in the spring. Because if we're asking people to approve a budget and then we're asking them to also approve on top of that.
Just because you don't want to do it at the same time?
I don't know if I'd be comfortable doing it at the same time. Maybe if the board's comfortable with it. that would be,
We have plenty of time to, over the time to have that conversation still. You know, you know, the other thought becomes, you know, if you're going to be driving a lot more voters with a board election and a school budget election who may be more prone to approve that for you. Whereas if you put this on by itself, you may get more people who are opposed to this. Absolutely. You know, itself as a single issue, and you're going to get less of the people who are going to be out voting anyway, who are always going to go, you know, vote in that.
I think one of the things that we typically see though is when you see them go out, you're not seeing a large taxpayer portion. Jim, am I correct in saying that typically 1.5, 1.7?
That's generally been the range that people are in. Yes.
Yeah, 2.5, 2.7 is high. You know, if we were to go that range, that is high, and then to ask that on top of doing, you know, if there is a budget increase, you know, you are looking at, you know, it all depends on the package and how, you know, what the budget looks like and what this looks like. But again, I just want to give everybody a very clear picture of this is going to cost money. We could wait another year or two. Our window is definitely there, you know, in a time frame we talked about. But the more capital reserves that you can put in, the more that you're able to bank, the less it is that you're going out with. Thoughts?
I think I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you're saying usually in a budget year, people's taxes are going to increase about 2%.
Typically, yep.
Just for regular school budget. And you're saying this will be another 2%, 2.5% on top of that?
Correct.
For every year for 21 years?
Jim?
Correct. That's the range is 19 to 21. Yes, depending on which size of project it is.
And that becomes allowable because of how the debt service factors into our tax cap calculation?
Yes, when you have an approval from the community, it's included in the tax cap calculation as part of your local share of debt service.
But in the following year, let's be clear though. In the following year, if you go out again, whatever your budget increase is going to be for the following year after, if it's 1.5 or 2, that's all it is. You're not then seeing the 2% on top of it. You've already voted, and you've already jumped it up to that level, so it stays at that level and doesn't do it. The other thing, though, I want to be clear on is we have a ton of growth. The more growth we have, the more that 2% gets spread out and pushed out to more of our community. So we're not seeing as such of an impact. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of positives that go along with this. I just really want to lay it on the table, though. If we didn't have a lot of growth and that impact was actually going to be spread out upon all of our community without having the extras that are there, we'd be feeling more of a burden of it. But the fact that, you know, there's 20 more new homes coming in, that's going to be spread out among those homes as well. So we'll have, the people like us will feel less of that impact.
And when you say that's high, the 2.5 to 2.7, what is considered normal with a capital project percentage-wise?
I mean, I've seen them go out over 2. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I haven't. But typically it's like 1.7, 1.9 in that ball, you know, 2 at the most. I've seen 2.5 before. But again, it comes down to what the need is. You know?
Right. I mean, that's the hard part. If you need it, you need it.
Yeah. And I mean, we're at a point where we're going to need it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you're right. I don't really know if we're going to have to do something.
it's, you know, when you were going out with a project where there's taxpayer burden, it takes a lot more to communicate, and we have to be clear, we have to have expectations, and we have to be careful on the bells and whistles on the things that we add to that project, because, you know, if we're adding extras to these projects, people are going to say, well, I don't want the extra, not understanding it, and then that's where you start to see things getting voted down as well.
But so, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, isn't it not just as simple as slapping an extra 2.6% on top of whatever our annual increase is? It's been a while since we dug in deep to this stuff. It was like
Jim
2 years ago.
all these
Yeah, that's why I'm at
Yep.
it. So debt, as I understand it, debt service goes through some more complicated set of calculations in that tax cap calculator to go and generate your final, right, your final tax cap increase.
So what happens with the tax cap is you have all of the different portions of the calculation. One of the portions that's an addition is what your local share of debt service projects is.
Right.
So when you have a debt service project that has been approved, one year it'll be a lower number, the next year it'll be added to by that number, whatever it is, the local share that has been approved. It's a one-time change. It does increase the amount you're allowed under the tax cap as a percentage, but so you might see if a 2.5 project is approved and the tax cap is 2, that are allowable is about 4.5% increase on the tax levy.
But then the next year after that, it goes back down, correct, Jim?
It's only the budget impact because there would be very little change in that local capital share.
Say your debt service payment is $500,000,
Yep.
right? You only need to come up by $500,000 once, and then you're already up by that $500,000 for the
Yeah.
money.
Exactly. But if the board is fine with this, we can move forward.
Yeah, so we have to start figuring out how we communicate all this stuff in a good way to taxpayers, community, so that we're articulating.
Well, I think the first conversation we need to have is with the board.
Mhm.
Is this something the full board wants to move forward with? If that is something that the full board wants to move forward with, then we start game planning out when would we go out for a vote? How would we communicate it? Is it something, when is a good time for this? I think then we move forward, but I think we have to have at least a full conversation with everybody saying, here's the options, here's what's there, here's how much it's going to cost.
I kind of like what you just did with us would be very beneficial for the full board.
But the full board hasn't seen any of the plans either, right? Like they haven't seen the elementary school. So
True.
Next time, right?
So you want us? So that's why I want to make sure. So you want me to put it all in a nice, neat package?
Mm-hmm.
Everything together, do a presentation, maybe even have the architects and Jim come in.
Sure.
And literally just lay it all out on the line.
Yeah, and also if you could add a piece that explains why we feel that it's imminent that we're going to need.
That's the number one.
That's like the starting place, right?
Yeah, that would actually be before I even have them go into it.
Yeah.
I'd give people the why beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we have to keep the process moving, and then we'll see what the board thinks.
And again, this whole conversation started off with a very giving community. I do believe that the community would support it. I'd be nervous, about it. I mean, it's very nerve-wracking. But I do believe the community would support it. What do you think, Rob?
No, I think so.
But that's why when people want to add other stuff and talk about other stuff, the project then becomes bigger and bigger and bigger.
Then it looks excessive, yeah.
I just want to be very careful on how everything is done.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. So let's go to Bill. All right, Bill. Updates on radon, roof, field development, field fertilization plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Start off with the roof, since that's sort of relevant to looking at a new transportation facility. So roof was surveyed by Mosaic at the elementary school this past summer. The minor repair estimates at this point are $12,350. The long-term plans are $120,000 and $15,000 consecutively. Some of the roofs that are being looked at are the ones on the bus garage that need to be repaired or replaced, that are in pretty dire need of some work. So that's something to figure into this whole big topic as well, as that fits into that.
So
Our guys have
you said at the elementary school roof.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Which I know in the last had some work done.
Yeah, I know. Just
Yep.
more and more money.
Yep. Our guys have been trying to do what they can as far as making sure drains are open and scupper rolls are, discharges are clear and that sort of thing. There was also a recommendation about trees, which have been mitigated up here. So that's type of stuff has been taken care of. Up here at the high school, long-term goals, we're looking at $1.5 million. We need to figure about 10 years down the road for 22 of the roofs that are up here.
That's 10 years.
That's, yep. Up here, we're in better shape. There's currently a contractor waiting for a crew to come out and attempt to seal the wall on the high wall area of the gymnasium, which is causing a leak in the hallway that's been ongoing for several years. Several other little projects up there, I guess, have been taking place already. We can go to.
Where are we with the roof area where the door is that's still leaking up there? Are they going to patch that up?
They're supposed to look at that as part of the project. It's
Okay.
not in their scope, but it is addressed.
Okay.
So I don't know what is in their scope, what they have a plan for, or what they're going to do to mitigate that on that penthouse area.
Yeah.
That is mentioned in there.
Okay.
We'll move on to lead water faucets. Again, I don't know what everybody does or doesn't know what we have. We have 128 of them up here at the high school, middle school, 79 down at the elementary school. Due to the past projects that have gone on or just finishing up, 10 of the faucets that were in need of replacing were taken care of by projects. So they're either science room tech areas, either replaced or eliminated in those projects. 5 of them were replaced elsewhere throughout the building up here by our crew. We have 8 more that we need to take care of that are over the 15 parts per billion that we need to order faucets for. The issue with these is that many of those, not many, but about half of those are in the science rooms. And the fixture is a combination fixture that also has 2 gas valves in it for the science desk. So it's an all-in-one fixture that's pretty unique, trying to find something that fits it. And then the next part of that is, if you can't fix it, how do we replace it with something that looks acceptable? We're drilling into the surface on those science desks. So that's clearly.
Or we don't, and we just continue to keep it
Continue
as
to
it is.
monitor and just stated that it's non-potable drinking.
So I think it's important to note that all the work that we're doing with the lead faucets, this is ones that are monitored or not. They're all ones that we have known about. We're actually going down even lower.
Yeah,
right?
that's another 10 for 5 parts per billion.
5 parts per billion. So we're actually going to the new recommended levels. We're getting rid of all that stuff. They're already been marked non-potable. So except the ones that are under 5, because that's new, right?
Yep. No, actually, I think I had to put signage on those, especially if it was a gang bathroom. Trying to discriminate which are which in a gang bathroom and just labeling all 4 sinks was the safest.
So they're all labeled, but I think the goal of what we're trying to do is, instead of having them labeled, we just want them all safe. We don't want to have to worry about them. Just don't even have them saying "do not drink" out of it. Just not worry and have them all be where they need to be.
The other issue with that is some of these are all in the same area, and it's starting to look like maybe this is a plumbing issue, a piping issue, or some more than a faucet issue. And of course, after this is done, we have to go back through and retest to confirm that we're safe to remove the signage and that they're in compliance. Elementary school is great. Elementary only has 2 more that are over 5 parts per billion. One of them is listed as garage. So again, if we do this $20 million project, the only garage I know of is the bus garage, so that would be inclusive in that.
So where are we with radon?
Radon. After the last test, there was a test in January, a test in April. After the test in April, we only have 2 rooms in the entire district that are not in compliance. And one of them is right at the level, exactly at the level of 4. And the other one is 4.4. The one at 4.4 had a second device tested in the room, 2 test kits, and one of them passed. So that one we're going to, both of those.
We're going to test it again?
So what we're probably going to try and do is see if we can do anything with changing the makeup air for the unit vents. Okay. The other part of the suggestion was from the team was also looking into a passive mitigation system. So no fans, simply a vent in the ceiling that vents outside. So more makeup air pushing some of that outside might mitigate it. The problem with getting into anything in that room, the one that's high, is it has carpet on the floor. So to try and put an in-floor system or anything else, we're talking the summertime project, obviously, for any of this. So that's actually great because between January and April, with all the protocols changing for fresh air and COVID and everything, we took, 15 18, I forget how many were on the original list. We went down to 2. It was actually amazing what was accomplished with that. What do we want to touch on next? Over the lock and keys.
Development of field fertilization plan.
Okay. So last week, went up on Friday, being contacted by the person that was recommended for our soil testing. So I'll be setting that up as soon as our soil is tested. We'll come up with a plan as to what we need to do in order to bring that up to speed.
Just so you know, I asked Rachel, since we do have somebody who is a PhD of soil on our board, let's use our resources well. I asked her for resources to be able to test and make sure we're doing it right. The testing that we did once before was not comprehensive enough for fertilizer. So we're doing a comprehensive test of all our fields. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier is if we get on a good plan, as you guys talked about before, of overseeding, fertilizing correctly, irrigation, we're going to get our fields up to where they need to be as well. Right. And then lock and key, Bill, you want to talk about that quick?
Yeah, lock and key actually start a professional survey tomorrow night. The lock and key situation in the district is there's at least 2 primary key systems that we have here, at least. The one that we started mitigating over to, obviously it's all prior to myself, was the best core system. Best core system, they've also started mitigating within that over to proprietary key. This is a nightmare for us because we're trying to get keys for our new nurse. It's coming and doing our testing, and it's taking 2 weeks to get the keys because they're proprietary. So one of the
Meaning we
things,
can't make them on site.
we can't make them on
He had
site.
explained that to me. I didn't understand.
I showed them the key because it's just, you wouldn't even believe how stupid what they did, but they changed a couple of things and made it so we're stuck with not one vendor, there's multiple vendors, but we're, a small fish in a big pond for them. They're not jumping on it when we need 2 new keys. So this is one of the things, maybe it's a time when we look at either getting away from that, staying with best, or getting away from all of this junk, going back to a Schlage core system where we can cut keys. We have a machine at the elementary school, add blanks, and just start from square one and straighten this mess out. So within that is also the intruder locking hardware. The intruder locking hardware, some of what we have here is compliant, some of it isn't compliant. Some of it's compliant, but it's probably not the greatest idea. Having push buttons where you have a rubber stopper behind the door swings open, it hits the push button. Student shuts the door, teacher shuts the door. If the teacher's coming in now, they're locked out. So there's different things that are going to be discussed and with one plan. The doors are another issue. A lot of the doors in the building haven't been updated in years. Some of them are pretty much grandfathered in as far as fire safety code because they have louvers in the bottom. So that's one of the issues we want to look at and get some pricing and figure out what we can do with that. The other part of that is also some of the doors are older and they have the glass in the door with the wire mesh. So
Things you're not supposed to have.
yeah, some of these things are definitely not a priority 1 list. Some of these things are a priority 1 list. We have doors that currently need to be replaced. The price has gone absurd. To explain it to Frank, what 1 door costs now.
$2,000 for a door.
For 1 wooden door with nothing. Yeah. 2 years ago, I seen a proposal from one of my counterparts for a different one, exactly the same door. It was $2,000, all inclusive, lock, everything installed.
Could you imagine putting a $2,000 door in your house? Just
Got the front door. That's it.
Yeah.
Not a bathroom door.
Joe, is there anything else, Bill?
Anything else that's really relevant to all of this? Did you want to touch on the phase 3, what we were looking at doing with the?
We talked about it before.
Okay.
Right. Phase 3, we talked about the LED lights.
Mm-hmm.
They came out.
Yeah,
They came out Friday. And
So I did look at I'm trying to figure out ways that we can still do the secured vestibules because that was a conversation that was had originally when the project came out, but never was voted on to be able to have it as part of it. We talked about this. Yeah, the secure vestibule is not going to be $250,000 no matter what way I look at it and cut it. And right now we're about $120,000. As we talked about last time, the phase 3 lights, we can get LED lights throughout the hallways. And if I bank out the cafeteria and gym and I don't do those and I do the swim instead, that's what we're trying to look at because the pool is it's extremely dangerous to do lights in there. They're very expensive. So if you can do LED lights in the pool area and you can have them go for 15 years, you're going to save a ton of issues in the long run. And then we can do other stuff, but definitely that's kind of the way. So
and they're original.
Yeah.
The ones that are in there now.
That's scary.
So those are actually original. The other things we touched on, we're also took the architect and gave her a tour of the track and the tennis courts.
So let's move on with that. So any other questions regarding building updates for Bill? Nope.
You had the softball field. I'm just curious only because spring is right around the corner.
Yeah. So Bill, you want to talk about that quick?
Softball field, I'm going to go back and look at the quotes for more filler to add to that and try and, just put down. We're talking about the satellite field. Yeah.
And the other ones we need to make sure.
This back here we know because we have a ponding
Yeah.
issue. So trying to find a decent quote, obviously inclusive of delivery of the, a filler to soil to put in that area. Us trying to move it in a, a little mason-sized dump truck is not efficient, So I know there was a couple of quotes previous and they were rather high. So the idea is to find out what we want for soil exactly and then reach out and maybe do an RFP.
But right now it's cut well. It just needs to be more fill and weed it out. So.
Oh, we just set up another quote for the scoreboard to go in down at the volleyball the soccer and lacrosse. Contractor came out Friday and scoped that out as well. So that's sitting in the basement. It's been there.
Yep.
We just have to have everything set up and then plop it in place. And will be another addition to satellite fields and bring it up and stuff.
Thanks. So next thing, Trish, that good? I had it on. I totally forgot about it. So thanks for pointing that out. Upcoming budgetary discussion. So at this meeting and the next meeting, we should really start talking about the things that we want to plan for in the future and add. As you know, Jim and I talked about this. We need to do a capital outlay project each year. And then on top of the capital outlay project, that's $100,000. We should always budget for it. We should always then also try to figure out what else are we going to do, right? Two things that have to get done facility-wise that if we don't at this point, we're just going to end up paying for it in the long run is our tennis courts it's time. Not that my kid plays tennis. This is a conversation way before I got here and way before my child started playing. We did the trees. We're trying to do everything. Those tennis courts need to get done. We can't have facilities that are falling apart. It's just unsafe. So that's going to be one thing that I want to budget for. And then the other thing that we need to budget for is we need to budget for the track. It's up. It needs to be resurfaced. If we don't resurface it now, it's going to cost us more in the long run. Jim, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, those are priorities that we need to put in the budget. So we'll have to go out and get an idea of the estimated cost of that so that we can plan for it.
Is that including the $100,000 project?
That the $100,000 project exists separate from what we've set aside as special projects.
Okay.
So it's a matter of figuring out what that $100,000 project would be. Whenever you deal with the $100,000 project, you have to make sure that you have at least $10,000 in the building, which we've discussed with the elementary school issue, to make sure that it is aidable.
So could we do the tennis court as part of the $100,000 project and then do another project inside the building?
That would be one way to tackle this, yes.
Trish, what are you thinking? Do you see anything else that we think we should tackle for facilities purposes?
We've been talking about the tennis court for like 10 years.
Right? Yeah. So tennis courts are a must. So
it seems, just an equity issue to make sure we're taking care of every different group a little bit here and there.
So we can, to me, those are the two big ones, along with, doing the fertilization, doing all the other stuff that goes along and the equipment that goes along with it. And then if so let's say the $100,000 project is the tennis courts and then $40,000 inside or $30,000 inside, then we start tackling either lights or asbestos or ceiling tiles or any of the other things that go along within the building. Because the building condition survey will tell us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I agree with the philosophy with the track. It's better to do preventative than to have a disaster in a few years.
It's already a disaster. Bill, you went out there with the architect.
Yeah, it's undermined. There's washouts in it. And even, it's actually kind of, from a walking by, drive-by view, it looks great. When you
Okay.
start looking at it, if you walk on the edges, it starts collapsing under your feet. It's all
Oh.
material it's
Really?
made out. Oh yeah, on the
Yeah.
edges, it's washed out. It's actually washed out. And the
Yeah.
tennis are in kind of the same situation. There's a subsurface issue that's causing the problem with that.
Yeah.
And we still have to look at, as Jim and I were talking about, our driveways, they have giant cracks in them. There's holes and things that got to get patched. So, there's definitely facilities issues that we're going to have to address in this project, in this upcoming budget that, we just didn't get to this year, but we're doing a lot this year as well. There's huge, leaps and bounds being taken this year at the elementary school. So. All right. So last one, facility use discussion outside community use groups when in district. So we talked about high rates. I talked again to Albany County Department of Health just recently. They have agreed, and they've told me, epidemiology also spoke to me. We in campus are going to go 20 to 25% reduction. So that's where we're at, 20, 25% use.
20 or 25% capacity?
Capacity use, yeah.
Okay.
So like say the auditorium, and we're working with, the arts and everyone,
Does
that's
that-
about 200 people.
Does that go the same for sports?
Well, sports is going to be a little bit different because 20 to 25% might be over 250. It might be like 300, 350, right? And how then can you manage 300 people on a bleacher? So,
so you're saying it may be even less than that?
it will be less.
Okay.
So they actually, Mr. Shea met with the student council today. So the kids are actually trying to decide a good way to have this work out. So, and Joe's going to be working with a group, and Mr. Shea is going to be working with a group to figure out how they can lessen the capacity, but still keep it equitable for kids and parents to be able to be a part of it and see it. Because, we still want it to be a kid's school. But we have to be careful on how many kids we have indoors, especially now, right? I mean, still high transmission rates. The one thing we did come into terms with was that we're not going to allow concessions any longer indoors, because you can't, outside is beautiful. You can go outside and eat. Eating inside and everybody standing around the hallway, probably not the best idea. So no concessions. Epidemiology and, Albany County Department of Health did say closing the indoor use of facilities during the time of high transmission rate is something they would recommend. They did say some school communities do it differently, but this is what they recommend that we do. They do think it's the best options. They said for high-end substantial. I think we can always revisit substantial though, depending on what the rates are and what things look like and see what they are. But they were pretty firm and confirmed what I said the other night as well. Again, that, doing what we're doing is safeguarding the whole community, not just our school, but safeguarding the full school community. But that is taking away, I have now told the Kiwanis Club that they couldn't use indoor facilities for a Halloween party. I've told, listen, it runs the gambit here. I've told Swim they couldn't use it. I've told Dollars for Scholars that they couldn't use it. There's things happening that we've had to say no to because of, this event. But I think the next question is going to come to is, what then do we allow when the rates go down, and what does it look like? So we're start having this conversation now, so we're not having it in 2 months when the rates go down. Thoughts?
I like your attitude that it's going to go down in 2 months, Frank.
I figure cross, Trish, like when we go down in 2 months, it's a hope. Well, you get the vaccine, it's going to come out for youngers. The boosters are coming back out. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of breakthrough cases, because of what's going on. Some of the cases now are coming out are breakthrough in comparison to not. So get those boosters going and vaccinations.
I got mine.
So what's your thought on this of layering it out?
So right now you're saying for orange and red, it's 20 to 25% capacity, right?
Yeah, so that's indoor, that's school use. I'm thinking more so right now, I do not have anything for outside facilities for red. It's no use.
Okay, so it's let's say 25% for in school, 0% for out of school.
Correct. So
Okay, so maybe we just try to, I don't know, if you want to like have a tiered percentage, or maybe Rob has a better solution.
I don't have a solution.
I don't. Albany County seems to think during substantial we should have none.
Right.
I've my thinking has shifted since like 2 months ago when we were first talking, where I was in my head trying to find all kinds of ways to do. It's almost easier, and even though it's almost more equitable, and nobody, instead of being like, well, this group can because we think this and this and this, and maybe at this X percentage, or what, even if you say at 25% capacity, maybe there's only 4 usage types that can go use that, and you're telling other people you can't, and then you can. Like inside my head, it's almost more fair to just say no until you can get everything in like it should be.
Until we get to like low and moderate.
That's just my gut. I do think it's definitely a full board discussion.
Oh yeah.
But that's just my, because it's how do you make those decisions in a fair way? It's hard. Like I don't, I mean that'd be your job, I guess, because I don't want to be the one being like, well, this group, it seems like their sport is safer, so they should be able to use it in January if it's substantial. But this group is not, or
that's a very hard road.
It's not the business I personally want to be in, and I don't envy anyone who has to make that type of decision. So that's my non-answer again, I guess.
You're not helping, Rob.
I know.
That's a very valid point, though. We certainly don't want to have to pick and choose.
No. And that's what ends up happening. I mean, you're right, because all right, so dance could do it because they could hit 20%.
Right, like dance could do 20% in the pack easily, so they can do it. But then you're telling Kiwanis Soccer wants to do their indoor practices in January, February, and they can't, and because it's whatever, and like, so you're going to tell one they can, they can't. It's I don't know. Are people more upset, or the people who are upset more upset in that scenario than like everybody just being like medium level upset when nobody can do it? I don't know. There's no right answer yet, but I think it's a conversation we have to keep having.
I think also the other tricky thing is I forgot about indoor track. And I saw that on the list of the thing that went out today. So if you have kids running in the buildings for our own school, it'd be hard to mix that with other people using it. I kind of, it seems a lot easier to just say we just can't right now and revisit. I don't just push the issue down the road and then we're pressed for it when it comes up. But
2 months from now, there becomes a different type of discussion that maybe is even less palatable. But once 5 and up is eligible for vaccination, you're going to have a lot more people vaccinated. I know a lot of people hate this thing and hate the concept of this thing, but you know what? The Excelsior Pass is a fairly equitable thing, right? It allows you to be vaccinated and just come right through. And if you are not vaccinated, cannot get vaccinated, you can get a test. So it's not a vaccine mandate or requirement. But I mean, you could theoretically just be like, you know what, if you want to be an outside group and use it, you got to use Empire Pass to manage your your entry, and then that's that. And then it becomes a really easy thing to do if people are vaccinated.
And
it's slightly harder to do if not.
So our medical director did weigh in on that. So I'm glad you said that. So our medical director, has stated that any outside group facility should utilize the same policies that the district has in place. Mm-hmm. Like he said, that is the number one thing. He goes, if you make people test, then they test. If they vaccinate, they vaccinate. If they're 6 feet, you're 6 feet. Like that's how it works. He then also stated that it's on them to have the ownership of that. So they have to then adhere to it. They have to then monitor it, and they have to do it. So that was one thing that he did state to us, like when I was having these conversations, is that they need to follow what the district is. You can't say to one group, the district says this, but yet then opening it up to another, and changing it. He goes, you really have to make sure that it's always the same. So that, I think it's a hard road? Yes. I don't think we can change anything now until 2 months from now, when the vaccinations change and other things open up.
Rob does make another really good point about vaccinations are very imminent for 5 and up. Yep. Which can be a huge game changer. So maybe we focus more on if and when that happens, we offer another clinic. So we're doing our part to help our community.
I already have it booked.
There you go.
The clinic's already ready to go. I have the same groups that helped us before do it. They're just waiting. The minute that it comes, they're going to text and we're going to set it up within a week. So we're already maximizing that. And then I think it will change. I think it will change the game plan, because if we have groups of people that are vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have to have the conversation of use. What's the capacity? Who's coming in? How are we creating spread or not creating spread? That becomes the next conversation. And I think then we can tier it out, right? Make a
Yeah.
And in some respects, if you look at that, sort of the way that other folks in the state, not education specific, but look at that. I mean, there's a set of broadly accepted practices out there for different crowd sizes, whatever. And I mean, look, I went to SPAC and saw a Dead & Company, and I brought my little thing and scanned it. You had to be vaccinated or get tested, and people are doing that kind of thing all over the place. So it.
Okay. That's good. That was a good conversation.
Cool.
Anything for the good of the order?
I don't think so.
Oh, can I just ask a technology question? The Chromebooks that you mentioned, that's to help with the one-on-one, or that's to replace ones that are dying?
A little bit of both.
A little both. Okay.
A little bit of both. Yeah. So it's to do one-on-one and make sure that our kids get it this year, because right now we don't have ones that are dead. We have some, but not a lot.
Yeah.
We do have the ones that are dying that will be out in June that we still have to replace. So that will also help do that as well. So we can then continue to budget and make a plan to go forward. It's a sore subject for me because Jim knows how much I can't stand the fact that, when the updates run out on Chromebooks or iPads, Law 2D, we're really not supposed to utilize them any longer because it makes the personal identification stuff where people can hack and find it more. So we're opening up risk. So that really bothers me a lot, but we'll surplus them the best we can.
Okay. And just the language in the letter that went out about the light speed, could you just, wait, is it called light speed? Yeah, light speed. It says teachers can view what's on their school computer screens. Does that mean computers while at school or school issued computers?
Computers while at school.
So any device, personal or school issued?
When it's logged into Google though.
Well, most kids are logged in nonstop.
With their Google accounts, yes, but most kids use double accounts when they're in the system. Like, I know like my child will have his own personal account and the Google account and have them flipping back and forth on his phone.
So can this also see their phone if they're logged into Google?
It will only allow them to see the Chrome that's open for Google, their account. So their school Chrome account. That's all they can see.
So if they're logged in on their phone, they can see it on their phone?
No. Just knowing light speed, while they have mobile device management, they don't have anything resembling Classroom for mobile devices. It's
Okay.
only it's Mac, Windows, or Chrome OS. Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of people ask me what that line meant. And I think a lot of people think it means just school issued devices, including a lot of teachers, for whatever that's worth.
I don't know. Whenever we do another checkpoint on technology with.
Well, I think any teachers
Moses.
I think the issue is this. I asked Shauna today who's reached out to her and she said no one. If people are having questions on that, teachers need to reach out to Shauna Worthley or our technology integration specialist, so they can answer the questions and get it cleared up.
Well, I just think just from experience of a student asking me about it, they asked their teacher and the teacher said, that doesn't concern us because we don't use school issued devices in this class. That's for what it's worth. So I think there's just a lot of confusion and I would hate for us to come across as not looking transparent. That's just my ultimate fear.
Well, I think you saw what I sent, that Shauna sent back.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading from. It says on their school computer screens, which a lot of people are reading, meaning a school issued computer. From stuff I've heard. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to put that out there. And if there's an opportunity to discuss it at some time, we could clear that up so it's very transparent.
I'll ask Shauna to discuss it and have her watch this facilities committee so she can address it.
Awesome.
All right?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
It's nice to have our new facilities person, so welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry it took a little longer. I tried logging in from my office and it wouldn't let me, so I have to have a talk with our IT person tomorrow.
Well, it seems like you're getting up to speed very quickly, so we appreciate it.
All right. See you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.